Uh-oh.
Up in her last two fights. Good way hitting him from that way down.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. A second look at the upcoming Cruz versus Gangloff fight scheduled for 8 rounds in the women's super flyweight division. Super flyweight, that is where Mexico's own Irma Garcia holds the IBF, Mexico's Ashley Gonzalez. She holds the WBC. Japan's own Mizuki Hiruta holds the WBO, and Argentina's own Clara Lescurat holds the WBA. That is also where Virginia Fuchs just won a points decision against Adelaida Ruiz. That is where this contest is taking place.
Cruz.
Cruz sports professional record of 8 wins with no losses, no draws, no recorded knockouts, not yet, but if you've seen her in action, you'll know she's explosive, you know she can crack, she can punch. She is a developing fighter that doesn't come from some deep amateur background, but she's a natural. She knows her way around the ring, and she knows how she wants to fight a fight. This is a step up in class for Cruz, fighting someone like France's own Melis Gangloff, a well-seasoned fighter, a well-traveled fighter that's been in there with the likes of Ebony Bridges and gave her all she could handle. Fought Ellie Scottney. Melis Gangloff sports professional record of 10 wins with 4 losses, no draws, 3 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 14 professional bouts. Needless to say, she's got more fights, more victories, more rounds in the bank than Cruz. Thus, she is the more experienced fighter of the two. The best way to describe Melis is tough and game and ready to fight.
She is no finesse fighter, no sugarfoot fighter.
She's a slugger.
She can brawl.
Last in action in April of this year opposite the ring, Megan Alvarad, who she stopped in 3 rounds. Melis has fought 2 times this year, once in January, then again in April.
Cruz.
Cruz, the Allentown, Pennsylvania resident, is on a similar schedule. She fought 2 times this year, once in March, then again in May. The Nancy Franco fight that was ruled a no contest afterwards, after Cruz tested positive for marijuana.
Initially, she won the fight. Initially, she won a dominant victory, but afterwards it was ruled a no contest because Liana tested positive for the wacky tobacco.
Get it together, Liana. Jesus Christ.
Stop smoking that reefer.
This is a Brian Cohen and Kaylee Reese promotion. K-O-Hen Promotions. It's got a ring to it.
It's good.
So what should we expect to see in the main event? What is the aesthetic of this fight between Melis and Liana going to look like? How's it going to be? It's going to be an action fight. It's going to be a shootout. Melis Gangloff is not one to shy away from an exchange, and Cruz seems to live in the exchange. Very explosive fighter.
Melis will oblige her.
If you are not already familiar with Melis Gangloff and you're seeing her for the first time, she is a mid-range to inside fighter. Comfortable within close quarters, catching and shooting from out of the high guard. Very aggressive, very durable.
She took Ebony Bridges' best punches when they fought, and we know that Ebony's heavy-handed. Some people thought Melis Gangloff did enough to win that fight. Some people thought she beat Ebony Bridges.
She'll be facing Cruz next. Cruz is very explosive, very fast. And athletic. I want to say that comparatively, Cruz is lighter on her feet. She's got more pep in her step, more bounce than Melis Gangloff.
It's important.
More speed in those feet to close the distance and put punches together. More speed in those hands to throw rapid-fire combinations in succession.
I think there's more on Cruz's punches than Melis Gangloff. Even though Melis is more experienced, I think the edge in power, a slight edge in power, it's got to go to Liana. I think her punches are more damaging.
See a situation where Melis Gangloff may be somewhat overwhelmed
in the pocket. Shades of what we saw in the Silva fight.
Like what we saw in the Silva fight, where Melis is basically punching in sequence, which is tantamount to taking turns. You let Silva tee off, you let Silva put together 3 and 4 punches, waiting for your turn to punch. If you do that with Liana,
your turn to punch may not come soon enough.
Liana does seem to have the edge in speed. To the eye, Liana is the faster fighter of the two, stringing together combinations. Melis waiting for her turn to punch.
And Melis is tough. She can endure. She can weather a storm.
Throws good tight hooks, uppercuts, mid-range to inside, but I do feel she's noticeably slower than Liana, and that matters. It's going to be speed that separates them.
Intensity. Liana Cruz is very intense person, intense personality, intense fighter.
Philadelphia native, Philadelphia slugger.
Fighter of Puerto Rican descent that could be worth some money with the right promotion.
I like Liana Cruz to win the fight. I don't think Liana Cruz stops Melis Gangloff. I don't think she knocks her out, but I do think she outworks her. I do think she's the more explosive fighter of the two, the faster fighter of the two, and that's going to make all the difference. I like Liana Cruz to win a points decision in what could be a hard-fought fight, perhaps the hardest fight of her young boxing career. Cruz on points is the pick. Men's heavyweight news ahead of his upcoming rematch with Tyson Fury. Usyk was asked if he is planning any surprises for Tyson Fury in their rematch. He said, "We are preparing candles, cakes, and so much for our friend. We will treat him to delicious hugs." If Alexander Usyk has any surprises in store for Tyson Fury ahead of their rematch, I hardly think he's going to give those details away to the media.
Not that sleight of hand is necessary.
No trickery need be involved. No sleight of hand. The fact of the matter is, even though Usyk is smaller, noticeably smaller than Tyson Fury, and at least 1 year older, he's still a better physical specimen, a more coordinated athlete, a more disciplined athlete, and a better boxer. How else do you explain him overcoming Tyson Fury's size, what many thought would be overwhelming?
That's all anybody could tell you in the build-up. That's all anybody could tell you ahead of the fight. That Tyson Fury is too big and he's too strong, so that as soon as he starts stepping into his punches and trying to put them together, he gets his nose broke in the 8th and gets ragdolled in the 9th.
It makes you wonder why it is Tyson Fury's even running it back with this guy. What is it he thinks he can do in the second fight that he didn't do in the first? Usyk has insisted Fury cannot pull out of their rematch on December 21st. No way, because the ball's in our court now. He has a contract, and so do I. Until December 31st, we have to hold this fight up, and including the date, if he pulls out December 21st, he will lose all of his money and dividends, and won't be a man of his word anymore.
Ahead of their initial meeting, after Fury suffered that cut in sparring that postponed their match, there was a hefty financial fee, a penalty in play that should either fighter pull out of the fight, it's going to cost them a lot of money.
From the sound of this, it sounds like that same stipulation is still in play. Is that why Tyson Fury hasn't pulled out of this fight? Because if he does, it's going to cost him a lot of dough. Thus, he's left with no choice but to go through with it. That when Turkey put this fight together, he wanted it to be a 2-fight engagement, not a one-off.
If you know anything about Tyson Fury and you've followed his career over the years, not just the Wilder fights, which is when most Americans started paying attention. Before that, Tyson Fury pulled out of quite a few fights.
The Klitschko rematch and a Pulev fight before that.
Ustinov too, don't forget about Ustinov.
This financial penalty acts as a safeguard to ensure that both guys make it to the ring, though let's be honest, if it's in play, it's not really because of both guys, it's because of Fury. It's because Fury's known to pull out of fights.
Him specifically.
The penalty that is in play, while it does apply to both fighters, that if Usyk were to pull out for some reason, it would cost him a sum of money too, we all know that that penalty's not there because of Usyk. Usyk doesn't have Fury's reputation for pulling out of fights. This penalty is there to ensure that Fury makes it there, because Fury's got a reputation for pulling out of fights. And ahead of this rematch, he would have every reason to.
He probably would if he could, if it weren't going to cost him a lot of money.
That is what holds him to this rematch, I think. That he's not at liberty to walk away without it costing him something. So he's running it back. Turkey's intention is to put Fury in the ring with Anthony Joshua, win, lose, or draw. Win, lose, or fall. he wants to see that fight through. For me, it's hard to imagine that Fury could go in there with Usyk, potentially get knocked out, lose worse than he did the first time, then move on to an AJ fight.
It's hard to imagine.
That's what Turkey wants. He wants to make Fury versus AJ whether Fury wins or loses in December. But it's hard to imagine that he could go in there with Usyk, get knocked out, then go straight into a Joshua fight with nothing in between. No fights in the interim.
If it's gonna happen, I don't think it's gonna happen that way.
If he loses to Usyk in December, after spending all of this year losing to Usyk, I would think they put him in an interim fight before facing AJ. Maybe an Ngannou rematch. Maybe a chance for those two to run it back so that Fury can do better and win more decisively than he did in their initial meeting, their first fight. I think they would do that before they just shove him in there with AJ.
I think.
Some feel that Fury may retire. That if he loses to Usyk for a second time, he won't be able to live it down psychologically, and he won't have it together enough for another fight. Another big one, like an AJ fight, because an AJ fight is still a big fight. The rivalry between them is not about a belt, there's some belts.
It's about bragging rights.
These unique circumstances are made possible by Turkey Al-Sheikh, just putting all of this together, and it really puts Fury's feet to the fire in a way that we've never seen before.
Fury's not one for immediate rematches, and I talked about that, how when he had that controversial fight with John McDermott, they didn't run it back right away. Fury was allowed to have a few fights in between. It was the same with Derek Chisora, their first fight to their second fight. Fury was allowed to have fights in between. It was the same with Wilder.
Because Tyson Fury really hasn't been one for immediate rematches, and this fight with Usyk, it's immediate.
Right back in the meat grinder.
I don't think that favors him. I don't think that favors him at all. He hasn't had time to build himself back up, build his confidence. He hasn't had that much time to put together a plan, a better strategy than what they tried to do in the first fight.
Doesn't give him a lot of time.
And he doesn't have the luxury of getting quote-unquote injured to pull out of the fight ahead of the fight, because once again, that would cost him
the penalty.
So I think the most that he can do is try to get off to an earlier start, try to amass an early lead, stop fussing around, stop fussing about.
That's what he can do.
I don't think that's going to work, but those are his cards. That is the hand that he has been dealt.
Tyson Fury normally has a penchant for wasting people's time. He's not being allowed to here.
The uncharacteristic silence we're seeing from Fury, not as talkative.
Jovial.
Could be because he's doing his best to focus on the assignment and figure this puzzle out, or it could be because he's been humbled.
The hell are you gonna say?
You spent enough time talking this guy down, calling him a middleweight, saying that he's nothing, and you were gonna walk over him. Well, that's not what happened.
The hell are you gonna say?
What can you say? I don't think of Tyson Fury as being all that mentally strong. I don't. So here on the heels of his first professional loss, he's not feeling too hot, too confident.
Can't talk himself up the way he normally does. He's been humbled. And it just is what it is.
Over to the Joshua versus Dubois fight that's right around the corner, Derek Chisora has said he believes Daniel Dubois is a changed man and won't quit versus Anthony Joshua. That was then, and this is now. Daniel's changed. Filip Hrgovic hit him with straight right hands. He didn't drop, and he didn't quit. He carried on going, and he won. Jarrell Miller, he got so tired he was about to quit, but he did not quit. The guy who boxed Joe Joyce and Alexander Usyk, he's not that guy anymore. He quit, but I don't think the guy we're looking at now is going to quit at Wembley.
I don't think he is either. I think he's going into this fight riding high, very confident, with a chip on his shoulder, feeling like a changed man, and maybe he is.
He was in over his head with Joe Joyce, 35 years old at the time to Daniel, who was just 23, still a very young man, not fully maturated as a fighter or as a man, whereas now he's got those experiences to draw from, the ups and downs of boxing and how it rounds you out as a fighter and rounds you out psychologically.
I don't think it would be at all far-fetched to say that maybe Anthony is getting a better version of Daniel than the one that Joe Joyce fought or the one that Alexander Usyk fought. This Daniel, this version of him, is more dangerous because he's more experienced and more confident.
My previous video, we talked about Anthony Fowler's eyewitness account of what happened with Anthony and Daniel some years ago in sparring. That while Daniel didn't knock him out, the way the rumors suggested, he didn't knock him out cold, he did hurt him, he did buckle him.
That's what Anthony Fowler said.
It all lends itself to the promotion, the fight spontaneity, that bit of backstory that they have with each other. Though, if I'm sticking to my guns, and I'm going with Anthony to win, it's because I don't have much stock in sparring stories to begin with. I mean, case in point, Philippe Hrgovic was said to have got the best of Daniel in sparring. But under the hot lights, who won?
Daniel won.
Heard Jim stories about Zurdo Ramirez getting the best of Dmitry Bivol in sparring, but under the hot lights, who won?
Bivol.
Gym stories are just that, gym stories. Sparring sessions are sparring sessions, irrespective of what happens. So when I see the resurgence of this story, this gym story, this sparring session between Daniel and Anthony, I don't have a lot of stock in it. Anthony is more accustomed to operating at this level, under the hot lights, more so than Daniel. Even if Daniel's riding high now, experience is on Anthony's side.
I don't think that Daniel is going to quit.
I think between him and Don Charles and their plan of action, they're going to do their best to draw Anthony Joshua out. Try to make it a shootout. Get him to trade. That's what they want to do. They're going to be aggressive and they're going to make it a fight.
At the start.
But Anthony's going to slow the tempo of the fight down. Move around, use the jab, and punish him with the jab because Daniel doesn't move his head.
Break him down with the jab. Because Daniel doesn't move his head.
Derek Chisora mentioned how Philippe Hrgovic hit Daniel with a lot of right hands, and Daniel was not discouraged. Daniel did not give up, and he did not quit. Credit to him for not quitting, but the fact that Philippe was able to land that same punch so many times throughout the course of a fight, you won't take a right hand from Anthony as well as you took those right hands from Philippe.
Sort of a backhanded compliment.
Like what they used to say about Joe Joyce's cast iron chin, that granted, the guy's got a cast iron chin, he can take a shot, but the reason you know that is because he takes so many shots.
It's a backhanded compliment.
When you say that Daniel took a lot of right hands from Philippe and he didn't quit, no he didn't, but what that also means is that you can connect the right hand, you can land it, because if Philippe did,
If Philippe can, Anthony can.
Daniel's dangerous, but defensively he's not responsible. Anthony is. That led to a lot of talk for a while about Anthony being gun-shy, being afraid to pull the trigger when all he was really doing was tightening up the holes.
They look at the size of him and they know what he can do, what kind of power he has, and they want him to just be a mindless brute, a bruiser. That's more Daniel's approach than Anthony's, but Daniel is a little shorter.
His arms, too. Anthony's got more reach than Daniel Dubois does. He'll be able to touch him with that jab from a safe distance.
Consistently.
Conditioning him. So that when Anthony does let the right hand go, Daniel doesn't see it coming. He'll be expecting more jabs.
Varying takes on how long this contest is going to last. I think we can all agree it doesn't go the distance, but I'd say it ends around round 7 or round 8.
Not that I'm expecting very many people to score this fight, since we all agree it doesn't go the distance, but I expect Daniel to have the most success he's going to have early, because he's going to get off to a fast start where Anthony will assume control after 2 or 3 rounds, get into a rhythm.
Break Daniel down.
I love the fight. It's one of the fights on the schedule I'm looking forward to the most.
I think Anthony stops him.